it's a nice day out, and you'd probably rather be outside or watching the 49ers or whatever. But thanks for coming, because this is an important meeting. A couple reminders before we start. First of all, I'll introduce myself as a co-chairman of the, I couldn't say the Lake Committee, I'm that too. I'm used to saying that. Of the election committee, and my co-chair, Kathy Joseph. So I'm going to start out, and then Kathy will take over halftime. Sounds like football. Just a couple reminders to you. Voting. You will be receiving your packet sometime next week, so look for those. And remember, we keep having to tell you this, follow the directions on the instructions, and be sure to sign the envelope. The guidelines for tonight, we do want to thank and recognize SSS Multimedia. They did a great job on Thursday night, very, very professional firm. And we will be putting the tape on YouTube sometime next week. You'll see it under YouTube Hidden Valley Lake. And the candidates already have this information, but just for those of you in the audience, each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes to respond, and 5 minutes for closing statements. And we have a timer sitting up here up front to remind them and give them some little clues. And then we will have a break, a 10-minute break at 3:30 for everyone. We have some good questions already turned in, and probably not as many as we did Thursday night. So Thursday night we were not able to get to even half the questions, but we thank you that there is the interest here and people are turning in the questions. So we'll get to as many as we can, and we ask you not to clap after the answers, and that'll leave more time for our candidates to answer questions. Also, I'm going to make a little courtesy statement. We ask you again not to speak out in the audience. If you do that, and if it were to continue, you would be asked to leave. Also, a courtesy thing for your neighbors. Even though the candidates may not hear you talking among yourself, it is distracting to your neighbors. So please cut down the chatter between yourselves. We appreciate that. We also understand out in the community there's been some signs that have been taken from everyone, from all the candidates. And so again, just as a courtesy, please respect everyone's property. And that's all I have to say there. You understand what the message is there. Let's see if there's anything else I've forgotten. The order of responses and questioning and responses will be rotated in alphabetical order. And I think that's all. We're going to stop the questions at 4:40 to give the candidates time to do their closing statements. So, yes, I mentioned that. Yeah. Okay, I think that is it. To start with, we actually have, as we did last Thursday, but a different question, but still a question from us, just to get you started and warmed up. Yes, well, have you do your opening statements first, and then I'll give you the questions afterwards. Okay. Starting with opening statements with Bruce.
Hello, everyone. Before I begin, I want to thank everyone for coming today. I know it's a beautiful day out, and there's lots of other things that you might be doing, so I appreciate your concern for your community that you're here in attendance today. I want to thank Kathy and Joy for their work on the election committee and putting on these forums. I'd like to thank our current board members for their volunteer service to our community, and I'd also like to thank the other candidates up here for their willingness to serve the community and their dedication to run. I moved to Hidden Valley Lake over 10 years ago. Over that period of time, I've seen many positive changes which have enhanced our community. The current board is working on even more improvements. Even with all these improvements, our association dues have remained nearly level. For 4 of the last 6 years, there's been no increase. Life is good in Hidden Valley Lake, and I wanted to give back, so I started to get involved. Now, here I am running for director. From the earlier candidates forum, it appears there are a couple of differences between the candidates around the issue of member voting on the Hartman project and on running a respectful campaign. On the voting issue, I recognize our board is set up as a nonprofit, mutual benefit corporation where the board represents the members. The board gets input from the community, but then is responsible for deciding the day-to-day issues of the association. The legal opinion from the association's lawyer backed this up. While it would be nice if members could vote on every issue, there's also substantial cost and time delays with any election to consider. When someone said the other day, if we would have already had a vote on the Hartman building, it would already be under construction, I was confused. That seems to recognize that the vote debate has delayed the project, while a vote would have confirmed the need for a new Hartman building anyway. The other issue that divides us is the running of a positive and respectful campaign, something I pledged from the start. All of the candidates seem to loathe the idea that social media is playing in the campaign with attacks on anyone with a different opinion. I was pleased to hear the other candidates say that they too were appalled by these social media attacks. What surprised me is they are apparently unable to stop or even influence their followers on these sites. If they truly believe what they are saying, I challenge each candidate to post a statement on these sites saying they are against the bashing and telling their supporters to stop. Putting true actions behind their words would go a long way in restoring some civility to the election in our community in general. I believe once we remove the rhetoric of the campaign, we will find that we are very close on many of the issues. Once we stop pitting users of one amenity against the users of others and realize that all of the amenities of Hidden Valley Lake are important to our community, and all need to be properly cared for and maintained, our community can begin healing and work together to make Hidden Valley Lake the place we all want to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Bob?
First of all, I want to say I'm glad the Giants won last night. Otherwise, I probably would not be here if they were still playing. I also want to say thank you for your thoughts the other night when I was not feeling too good. I'm feeling a lot better today, and hopefully we'll be a little more chipper. Thank you for being here and participating in this candidates forum. This is your opportunity to see and hear from the candidates you will elect to represent you on the board of directors. In my time on the board of directors, I've supported projects for all of the amenities within Hidden Valley Lake. If you take the time to look at my record, you will see that this is a fact, not just rhetoric. I have supported the marina renovation with a new parking lot and a new bathroom, and next year we will add a security gate and a new marina dock. I have also pushed for the building of a permanent restroom at Ravenhill Park, which will benefit the mothers and kids in that area. That will be approved next week by the BOD with construction to start shortly thereafter. These are just a few of the many examples of how I have supported all of the amenities. You will hear from the candidates on my left that they believe the members should have a right to vote on major financial issues facing this community. I could not agree more. The members do have a right to vote, and we exercise it every year when we vote for the people who represent us on the board of directors. This is your right, and I urge you to use it. The biggest financial issue facing the board of directors every year is managing an $8 million budget. The board of directors makes decisions regarding this budget almost every meeting, so the members do have a say in how money is spent by deciding whom to vote for the board of directors. You will hopefully today hear answers to the questions asked, not prepared and pre-written statements which are read that may or may not have anything to do with the question. I can guarantee all of you that the answers I give today are my honest opinion and not ones that I have had prepared by and am parroting for coaches. I have over 40 years of public service as a fire captain and emergency management specialist. I'm also a veteran of the Vietnam War, having served in the U.S. Air Force from 1972 to 1977. So my entire adult life has been spent serving people in one form or another. I've also spent more than 30 years as a high school and junior Olympic softball coach, so I have dealt with my share of drama. I have a record of team building and forming consensus. I look for compromise and win-win situations. But I also know that you are not going to please all of the people all of the time. Just ask my wife. My current service on the board of directors is just another example of giving back to the community. Again, thank you for being here today. Please listen closely to all the answers, the candidates, and finally I ask all of you to show courtesy and respect for all the candidates by not commenting during the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Kay?
Good afternoon. My name is Kay Lopez, and I would like to tell you why a vote for me is a vote for our community. I have the right sort of experience, having served as vice president of my previous association's board of directors. Therefore, I understand how a homeowners association can be run effectively if under proper management. I would like to help Herb Bish and Inga Rankin reform how HVLA's board sets policy for the association. Prudent management of our association's financial resources will be a particular focus of mine, as well as long-term planning that ensures Hidden Valley Lake and its residents prosper for many years to come. Major capital improvement projects, such as the Hartman Event Center, should be voted on by the association membership before contractual commitments are made. This is because large capital expenditures impact how all of the community's other amenities, facilities, and operations are maintained. Many of our amenities, such as the lake, the community center, the Greenview restaurant, and the equestrian center, have fallen into disrepair. This pattern of neglect needs to change. Although HVL's golf course is extremely important to the community, so are all its other amenities, facilities, and services. They all need to be maintained at a uniformly high standard of care. I promise to serve all of Hidden Valley Lake's residents and members with dignity and respect, not just a chosen few. Moreover, I will work hard to ensure the association's financial stability and responsible stewardship in order to promote a rich and enduring community experience for all. Please help me make our community even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Inga?
Hello, I'm Inga Rankin.
Is this working? Yeah.
Okay. Hello, I'm Inga Rankin, and thank you for coming to the Communities Candidate Forum. I'm seeking your support to join our current board of directors in helping to lead HVLA and make us a more vibrant and stable community. Let me paraphrase a recent Facebook comment I read. It said, Kay Lopez and Inga Rankin keep professing peace, but do nothing to bring it on. I'd like to see something positive come from the likes of them, but I feel I'm asking too much. The person who wrote that highlighted the heart of our conflict. We seem to be waiting for something outside ourselves to bring about a positive change, when that change can only come from within each of us. Healing a community is not about one side overpowering another. It is about coming together in good faith to solve our problems, create opportunities. While the likes of me believes that I can be an agent of change to unify us and bring reason and respect to the board. At the last forum, I was referred to as a golf course basher. In fact, I am a champion of the golf course even if I couldn't hit the ball off the tee. The current financial path of huge losses at our golf course is unsustainable, and those of us who want to tackle and solve the problem are the real champions of this amenity. The long-term losses, increasing financial burden on our assessments have been red flagged repeatedly by the auditors. We need to listen. Reducing the golf budget by $100,000 in the 2015 budget. Wow, what a step in the right direction. Then I realized how the saving was to be achieved by shifting $100,000 of expenses and grounds maintenance of the out-of-play area to the Commons Maintenance Cost Center. That's not cost cutting, that's cost shifting. And it only creates the appearance of a reduced golf subsidy. The out-of-play area cannot be readily used as common area for very good reasons, beginning with safety. We also need to protect the value of the homes that sit adjacent to these areas. So in reality, nothing will change except that an expense will be shifted to the Commons area budget without adding any usable common area. Oh, sorry, can't read it. Clever, perhaps, but not smart. It's absolutely true that the golf course is an amenity and as much may never be able to exist subsidy-free. But it's equally true that many members resent our paying for the public to play golf, eat sandwiches, and drink beer. I believe that if we do not address the problem of the golf subsidy, then not only are we being irresponsible, but we are sending golf off the financial cliff. I'm committed to solving this problem over time. For me, that means more than cost shifting. I'm committed to preserving, protecting, and maintaining all amenities to build stronger property values and support a rich and varied community life for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Inga. Okay, the first question is for Bruce. What have you done over the last year or so to become knowledgeable about the association's services, amenities, finances, and member desires?
I've been quite busy with that. The last year, I mentioned I decided to get involved with the association. So the first thing that I did was join a committee, started attending that committee regularly. Then I started attending board meetings to get an idea of the bigger picture. Started attending all the community forums, the fire safety, the budget forums. I started doing homework. Besides that, I've read Davis Sterling, many parts of Davis Sterling. I've read our entire bylaws, much of our CC&Rs. As I say, I attended the budget workshop, board meeting on the budget, and 2 finance committee meetings as well. So I've been to the finance committee, I've been to the lake committee, I've been to the golf and greens committee. Unfortunately, I haven't been to some of the other committees yet. I've also had sessions with a couple of the current board members, with the treasurer, to go over the budget, to get a little more background on the budget and the history of the budget. And I've had conversations with several of the other board members as well to try to get up to speed as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Bruce. Bob?
Would you repeat it, please, Joy? Thank you.
What have you done over the past year or so to become knowledgeable about the association's services, amenities, finances, and member desires?
Well, having been on the board now for 3 years, obviously I've been intimately involved with a lot of those issues. I see a lot of former board members in here, people who have served this community on the board. And as they will probably all attest, it takes a year or two at least to get an idea of how things actually work. I feel in my 3rd year on the board that I have gotten a very good grasp of how the operation works, how the budget works, how we plan the budget, how we go about making changes, and other types of issues like that. That's why I feel it's really important for me to go back and use that experience and that knowledge I've gained over the first 3 years to help steer this place forward in the next 3.
Thank you, Bob. Kay?
I too have looked into, gone to the meetings, gone to the board meetings, but I've also looked up, researched in the laws and the reserves and our amenities that need care for that hasn't been. So, and having clients telling me what they really need, what they want to see, I've had a lot of that. So I feel like there's a problem, there's a big problem, and that's what has brought me into this. So yeah, I've done my research also.
Thanks, Kay. Inga?
Well, I've done a lot of the same things that the other candidates have talked about. I've attended board meetings since I moved here 5.5 years ago. I've served on the Commons Committee, which is chartered to oversee the workings of all our common property for the last, I'm going into my 4th year. in preparation specifically for my candidacy, I toured all of our amenities with someone who frequently uses those amenities so that I could hear from them what they really like and what they're concerned about in those. I made my first tour of the golf course and have, I think it's a great course. I know a lot of people think I don't like the golf course, but I do. Separately from that, I've certainly read the CCNRs, the bylaws, the corporate code, and David Sterling. And I took I did a shift on the evening Saturday shift with security, which was very informative. Gave me a real sense of the huge tasks that our security staff has to take care of. We have 30 miles of road, and that night we had 3 security staff people, and they were really, really busy. I know unless you really see what they're doing, you sometimes think they're just riding around in cars, but they have very specific responsibilities. They relieve the guard shack people when they are on their mandatory breaks. We followed up a prowler call at the stables that evening, and I was amazed at how they got out of their cars, and one of them, they kind of tried to surround the stable to see if they could apprehend the prowler. They weren't able to, but they made a real effort to do so. So, yes.
Thanks, Inga. Next question is for Bob to start with. In your opinion, who will benefit the most from the new Hartman building and why?
I think everybody in Hidden Valley would benefit from the new Hartman building. It's very simple. Everyone here who drove into Hidden Valley for the very first time more than likely drove down Hartman Road, and the very first thing you see of Hidden Valley Lake is the Hartman building. It's not a very nice sight as your first impression of what's supposed to be and what is a very beautiful community. I think it's important to have a building that reflects what we stand for here in Hidden Valley, what we'd like to see, a nice, friendly, clean, new, appropriately sized building that reflects the community and gives a very good first impression to people who are driving in.
Thank you, Bob. Kate?
You know, I hate to be an ogre here, but I don't see anybody benefiting from something when we are $750,000 a year in arrears for this building as it is now, and then we want to go much bigger when we can't handle what we have now. So I see it as a loss all the way around, unless we can get together and say, look, we're not making it with the restaurant that we have now and the golf course, so we need to get some management in here that knows how to run them and knows how to either make them at least break even or have a cap on what we are going to assess this, or not assess, have our subsidies go to this. We need to really look at this and what we're doing here. I don't think there's any winners if we make this restaurant happen, because we're already in trouble with the one we have.
Thank you, Kay. Inga?
First of all, I have to say that I absolutely believe that the Hartman restaurant needs to be rebuilt. It's in shabby shape and doesn't reflect well in our community. However, I don't think that rebuild should be at the 11,500 square foot level and the $5 to $6 million plus price tag. Several years ago, the food and beverage manager was asked to prepare business plans for different size rebuilds of the restaurant. As the size of the restaurant increased, the losses he predicted increased as well. The only restaurant size that actually came out with a almost a level budget was the one that's actually even smaller than the one that we have. So my perspective is if we build a reasonable size restaurant at a reasonable cost, we all would benefit from that in our community. But I don't think the current plan is appropriate.
Thanks, Inga. Bruce?
Okay, I think that no one would benefit from a Taj Mahal restaurant, and no one wants one here. I think the one that's currently in the plans, a sensible sized restaurant that's just slightly bigger than the current one we have, around 10,000 square feet, would benefit everyone. I think it would benefit the large number of community members that are already using our restaurant, a large number of golfers would stick around a little longer, enjoy the facilities, those wanting to hold special events that there's not really a good place to hold now that would have a place to hold those events. I think all those groups would benefit, as well as the community overall. As was mentioned, I think it would put a nice face on our community as people drive in. It would make a much more beautiful entry and add to everyone's value of the community.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, starting with Kay. If elected, would you enforce the collections of all outstanding fines and put into play the rules and regulations that are not being followed at this time?
If elected, I don't have those figures in front of me as far as the, what is in arrears, so I don't have those figures. But you know, you have to go by our laws. We have to go by that. So we would have to enforce what is in our bylaws, and maybe look at those bylaws and change what is not okay. That doesn't feel fair. That's how I stand. Some things need to be looked over and really make it right.
Thank you, Kay. Inga?
I think our current financing department is doing everything it can to collect the fines that are set against various properties. I think there's obviously a lot of rules about how you can collect, when you can collect, and what process you can use. In regard to enforcing the CC&Rs, we have been very lax in our community in enforcing the CC&Rs since I've been here. And I know that ECC and Safety and Security are making an effort to change that process. So I think when you make a big change in a community, you have to give the community notice, as they have, that there is a plan to enforce the CC&Rs, and begin with a warning, which is what they're doing currently. But then I think we need to comprehensively and equally enforce all the CC&Rs across our community to make it the kind of community we all want to live in.
Thanks, Inga. Bruce?
Yes, I too would be in favor of the enforcement of the collection of as many fines as we can, and I'm in support of the current efforts that are being made in that regard. I understand there are problems with our current CC&R and other legalities that are stopping the complete enforcement, and those are being looked at. I know at the Finance Committee, when I last attended, they were looking at a policy to update the collection of bad debts. So there is work being done, and it is in progress, and I would support that work.
Thank you, Bruce. Bob?
There's a lot of different things here at play. We do enforce our fines as best we can. We have started using a small claims court as a remedy. The CC&R is the most common one that everybody talks about is beautification, is landscaping. We're kind of in a conundrum right now. We want to beautify the community, but we're in a mandatory 25% water rationing. So people are letting their yards go, and wouldn't be fair to fine these people for following the water restrictions. It's not their fault. It's the same thing we had a few years ago during the downturn in the economy when people couldn't afford to landscape their houses and their properties. You know, they were struggling just to make the house payment and make the assessment payment, let alone put in landscaping around their homes. So things slid a little bit. You know, it's going to take time, it's going to take effort, and it's going to be done in baby steps. It can't be, you know, a big hammer. It's got to be done in baby steps. But we can and we are trying to enforce the fines that we do levy.
Thanks, Bob. Inga, next question's for you. Could you explore the fact that only one owner can vote, even though there are at least 2 residents living in the home, not counting on renters?
Well, that's just common sense because we have so many shares in our community. Each one is represented by one lot. And if you had 5 people living in one household, it doesn't seem reasonable that 5 people should vote. So 1 vote per share, which is a lot, this seems really appropriate to me.
Thanks, Inga. Bruce?
Yeah, I agree with the current policy. I think part of that question maybe is the difference between our nonprofit mutual benefit corporation and a government entity. This is not a regular government entity where every registered voter gets to vote. It's based on the number of parcels within the development. So I have no problem with each parcel getting one vote.
Thanks, Bruce. Bob?
To keep it short, I can actually say I agree with Inga 100%.
All right.
This is a corporation, it is not a municipality. Every lot is a share, and you get 1 vote per share. So if you own 100 shares, you get 100 votes. It's the same as in any corporation. So I totally agree with that.
Thank you, Kay.
You know, I agree too, Bob. Can you believe it? we both agree. One vote per home is, I think, very fair, because if you didn't do it that way, I think it would get very, very confusing. So I think that's good. We all agree on that.
All right, thank you. Bruce, have you had direct contact with Ken Porter or any Valley Oaks representative? If yes, did you agree to give assistance to the Valley Oaks project if you become a director? If yes, please explain.
Okay, well, that's an easy one for me. I've never met him, never had any contact.
Thank you. Bob?
I wouldn't know Ken Porter if he was sitting right in front of me, and no, I've had absolutely no contact with him.
Thank you, Kay.
Myself also, I've never met him or had any contact with him.
Inga?
Well, we all agree again. I've never met the man. I certainly have heard of the plans for the development. However, I did get a campaign donation from him yesterday, and I returned that in an envelope saying that thank you very much, but I couldn't accept that donation. So that's my only contact with Mr. Porter.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question is for Bob. The last ballot result was nearly 50-50. What will you do to bring harmony to the board and community if you are elected?
I assume whoever asked that question is referring to the recent recall election. If they are, that's what I'm going to address, because I can't. The votes last year were not so much that they were close, but they were not almost 50-50. There is a lot of discord in this community. I've said that before. You know, it's important, and as I mentioned on Thursday night, the way to bring it back together is to get the people who are the moderates on both sides to start working together toward a common goal, and then pull in and bring in the more radical people from either side, regardless of what your opinions are. We need to start from the middle and pull in that way. And that's the only way it's going to work. As long as there's divisiveness and there's the rhetoric that goes on, it's going to be very difficult. But if we can get people who are willing to sit down in a room and discuss issues without getting personalities involved, I think that's the first step to moving forward.
Thank you, Bob. Kate?
Well, the close results show that we are divided. The whole community is divided. I don't feel that this went fairly for various reasons. I don't feel that it was fair in the least. So that's where I'm going to stop with that one.
Sorry, could you read the question?
Yes. The last ballot result was nearly 50-50. What will you do to bring harmony to the board and community if you are elected?
Well, in the 5.5 years that I've lived in this community, I've never seen the kind of division that I see today. And I attribute that division to the board's refusal to allow a vote by the community on whether or not we want to rebuild the restaurant, and if so, in what price category are we interested in rebuilding that restaurant. So I think the first thing I would do is to provide the community, or try to convince other board members to provide the community the option of voting on those choices. I think if the members of the community had the opportunity to really dialogue and to say why they believe this or that, and we all need to hear what the other side believes, and then we had the opportunity to vote on our preferences, I think most community members could then agree to move forward, and I think we would have a much happier community.
Thank you, Inga. Bruce?
I mentioned this a couple times before. My first step is to myself set an example by running a positive campaign. Beyond that, a couple things that I look for. I like to go to the source. If there's a question about something that was said or done, go to the source of that. Don't take it on second hand. Don't take the gossip. Look it up. Go to the source. Ask the person. Do whatever you can to get the truth behind it. The other is to grant sincerity. As we're talking to each other, we need to grant sincerity to one another. Believe what the other person is saying. Don't try to second guess what they're saying. What are the motives behind it? Those sort of things. We need to listen to what they're saying and do the best we can with that. What's bothering me a little is that I'm hearing some people seem to be saying that there's an excuse for bad behavior. If you don't get something that you want, it's okay to have bad behavior, and I don't agree with that. So I would ask everybody, the first thing we can do, as others have mentioned, we need to be responsible for ourselves. Start with ourselves. What can we do for ourselves to have proper action, to deal with each other in a civil manner, and show respect for one another?
Thank you. Next question is for Kay. How many lawn signs did you order and install?
Oh, 100. Well, there's not 100 left, but we did order 100.
Thank you. Inga?
We have the same sign.
Okay. Bruce?
How many did I personally order, or just for my campaign? I believe there's 200 of my signs out there.
Bob?
I had approximately 80 signs left over from the campaign 2 years ago that I had never planned to use again. But fortunately, we're still in my garage. I put those out, and then I did order 100 more, so there were 180 signs out of mine.
Thank you. Inga? If we must quickly bring our reserve funding up to very high percentages that some candidates claim are essential, how do we avoid large assessment increases and future delays of critical maintenance?
My way of addressing that would be not to quickly bring up the reserve funds. My way of addressing that would be not to spend discretionary money. I think bringing the reserve funds up to where they should be a gradual, consistent process until we arrive at the desired level of funding.
Thank you. Bruce?
Okay, I believe our reserves currently are about the right position, so I don't see a need to bring them up rapidly. We are going to look into that more in the future and have a follow-up reserve study, long-term strategic plan, I understand, and a couple other things that will help us make sure that our reserve studies are right. But without getting into all that has gone before in the reserve study, I'll just say that I support the current reserve study. And if there is a radical change or an increase in that, there has to be an increase in assessments or a drop back in current maintenance. The dollar says that. It can't be stretched in every way.
Bob.
Right now, our reserve fund, I believe, is in pretty good shape. It doesn't make sense to me to have $6 or $7 million sitting in an account just to say we have a high reserve fund. It's just like when you own a home, you don't put away the money for a new roof 30 years from now. You gradually save up over that time to be able to afford a new roof when it's time to put one on. So that's what we're doing with the reserve fund now, is we are funding it so it will be funded as we need it. There was a statement made the other night that we have moved forward or deferred over $200,000 in reserve fund spending. That's not necessarily because we don't have the money in the reserve fund, because we do. It is because we have found that either this piece of equipment or that piece of equipment or this or that is in good enough shape to have it last another year or two. So there is no reason to spend money just because it's in the fund for that year. You spend the reserve fund to replace equipment and other items as they become necessary. We plan out a lifespan on them in the reserve fund, but if they last longer than that, then there's no reason to spend that money on that item. That's why a lot of stuff gets deferred.
Thank you, Kate.
Well, we are right now around 20% without having a outside professional reserve study. We know we're around 20%. The average California funding is 55 to 60%. With loans that are 0 to 30%, and you take out huge loans, and we have 0 to 30%, you're almost surely looking at special assessments. That's what we want to avoid. 70% or higher, you're almost not going to get a special assessment. Other states fund theirs at 70 to 100%. Then you're out of the woods. Then if something comes up, you're okay. But we're not okay now that I can see. And this is what we want to avoid when we take out huge loans, because we do have other amenities that desperately need our help. One is the lake. The lake needs us. The lake needs us more than we need a restaurant. The spillway is now leaking. We have to look at those things that are going to be coming up that we're going to need the money for. Little Beach renovation in 2015, the equestrian center, the tennis courts, all these need work on it because they haven't been kept up. The community center, the roads are coming up. So this is all stuff we have to look at before we take out a huge loan for a restaurant. For a restaurant that we don't actually need. That's what we have to look at. These other things need us. The marina pier, the solar beams, the teen center. In 2007, the restaurant had a pest inspection, and it showed termites and mold, but that was never addressed and resolved until now. So, this is something, if we could all agree, it would be great, but we don't want to take the chances in our community when families are struggling to get by. We want to make sure that our reserves are in the right place, and I don't believe now they are.
No. You have your closing time to say something else. Okay, next question is for Bruce. Should the Capital Improvement Project Fund be tied into a long-term community strategic plan?
Yes, I think it definitely should. I think the long-term strategic plan, the reserve fund, and the capital improvement fund all really go hand in hand. We've been talking about the reserve fund, and when I first started studying the reserve fund, that was the first thing of concern to me, is that the Hartman building and the community center weren't included in that. And that was a concern until I realized that the board had recognized that, and they had started to capital improvement fund. And the money that they might have been putting into reserves for those buildings was going into the capital improvement fund. So it wasn't being ignored, the money wasn't being lost, and they were all being put together. So I think a survey would be good, and we could tie it all together, or not a survey, a strategic plan rather would be good to tie all those things together, the reserve study and the capital improvement fund.
Thank you, Bob.
The CIP, which is a fairly recent item, is designed to do that, just to improve to make capital improvements. Items that have come out of the CIP fund, for example, is the new bathroom up at Ravenhill Park. That will come out of capital improvement funds. Things like the Marina Dock will come out of reserve funds. Everything comes out of different funding within the budget. Capital improvement funds are for not new amenities, but new entities. And really, the bathroom is the best thing to use it as an example. If we put a water slide in at the pool, that could come out of the capital improvement funds, because that's something new that we don't currently have. I think the capital improvement fund, I agree with what Bruce says. As we get a long-term strategic plan into place, we'll have a much better handle on exactly how this should be funded and how much it should be going into it. The plan now with the loan, or with a loan of about $3 million or so for the Hartman project, the debt service can be handled out of the capital improvement fund, with still putting money into that for further enhancements within the community.
Thank you, Bob. Kate?
We need a vote, first of all, so that we know where we're going. We'll know what people want, the members want. We need a reserve study before we can go on, a professional reserve study, so that we know where we're at. We need a business plan. None of these have happened, and yet we've spent over $500,000 in architect fees just to find out, well, let's have a little look-see. That's a lot of money. So I feel like we need to plan for this a lot better than what we're doing now, and have these studies done so we know where we're going in the first place, and what we want, and what we can afford.
Thank you, Kate. Inga?
Would you read that one more time, please?
Yes. Should the Capital Improvement Project Fund be tied into a long-term community strategic plan?
Well, first of all, I think any wise community periodically does a long-term plan, and that plan then influences all the budgetary and construction decisions that the community makes in the future. We have a capital improvement fund. However, we don't have a capital improvement plan. And the law states that you should not, that every budget is, that a pro forma budget is required before you set money aside. So that's sort of the first thing that we're really doing wrong. And as everyone else has spoken about our whole budgetary process, I think I'm going to come back to reserves. The reserve study is the reserve fund is a fund that is designed to replace existing amenities, to do the repairs to those amenities when they need it. And I'm not suggesting. And let me go back to one other thing. This year, our reserve fund had $1.1 million worth of reserve projects that we decided not to do. What we did decide to do, or the board decided to do, or as soon as they vote on this, it's a recommendation, is to approve about $500,000 worth. Now, when a reserve study indicates that you have that only a third of the projects that are listed on it actually need to be done, it says that that reserve study isn't very well done. Another example of my problem with the reserve study is that in looking at the reserve study for the next 30 years, we've set aside only $2 million to to resurface our roads. I don't know if you've looked at our roads lately, but there are some significant cracks that need repairing, and that will get much worse if we don't pay attention to them soon.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. Next question is for Bob. Many members feel the board has not yet built a community consensus on the proposed Hartman project. What steps do you intend to take to build and demonstrate community consensus for the Hartman and Community Center projects?
The community is obviously very divided. There are people that do not want the community center or the Hartman project built under any sense. There are other people that say they want it built, but they want to vote on what's built or how it's built or how big it is or what color it is. When you have a vote, when you have consensus, when you have a vote on something, it has to be on a black or white issue. It has to be yes or no. It can't be I think so, but only if it's this big or if only it costs that much. When I was elected to the board of directors 3 years ago, I was elected by people who wanted the Hartman project to move forward. That was one of the many issues, but that was a major issue of the people who supported me and wanted me on the board, because that was the thought of the people, of the community. I was elected by a large number of votes. And so I am committed to following up on what I was elected to do, what the thought of the community was. If they didn't want a new Hartman building built, they wouldn't have voted for me. They knew where I stood when I was voted into this position. It is the responsibility of the board of directors to maintain amenities. That's one of our major responsibilities, and I believe I'm doing that in following through on the Hartman project.
Thank you, Katie.
The Hartman project isn't a restoration or anything like that. It's new construction. We're taking down, bulldozing a building down and putting up another one further back. We vote on that. Our bylaws, section 1105 on our bylaws says that the association shall not incur debts in excess of 5% of the amount of total regular assessments per year for the purchase of real or personal property, the issuance of bonds or debentures, or the mortgage of any of its property without prior vote or written consent of 2/3 of its members entitled to vote. So I believe that we should be able to vote, and I believe our laws say we should be able to vote. This is what governs an association. It's like a constitution. You follow these laws. So vote.
Thank you, Inga.
Sorry, we get so convoluted, I don't remember the question.
Yes. Many members feel the board has not yet built a community consensus on the proposed Hartman project. What steps do you intend to take to build and demonstrate community consensus for the Hartman and Community Center projects?
Well, I think the only way that we can build consensus on the Hartman project is to provide an opportunity to the community to vote on that project. I was interested in hearing Bob's rationale for moving forward with the Hartman complex, because his election, I believe, was 2 years ago, and this past year we had 3 open board positions. 2 of the 3 open board positions were filled by candidates who thought that vote was very important, and we had the highest number of votes for that election that we've ever had in this community. So if the number of votes for candidates who have a particular position is important, then we really need to recognize the community demand for a vote on that project.
Thank you, Bruce.
I think it's a long process to build consensus. I think we're in the process of that right now. It started several years ago when the board did the Gentry study. It continued when they did an RFP. By my count, I mentioned before, there have been 30 board meetings and 5 special forums that have talked about the Hartman process and what to do with the Hartman building. So it's a long process over several years to get input, to get consensus. These forums really are another way. We're talking an awful lot about the Hartman. It's a way to get information out and to build consensus. When people go to vote in this election, it's another way for them to vote and express their opinion, what they want done. I don't feel that our bylaws or anything has called for a vote yet. I do understand 1105. It possibly may come into play later. We're ahead of the card a little bit there. But at this time, I think just the process itself, the community meetings, the input, meeting with the architects, the opportunity to change the designs as we go, all those things are things that help build consensus on the plan.
Thank you. Kay, the next question is for you. How will the association pay for a new Hartman facility?
Well, in my opinion, what we're going to have to do if we're going to take out a huge loan like that is worry about special assessments. We don't have enough, and apparently there's going to be 2 loans taken out. We're taking on more than we can handle. I think that the only answer is to allow people to vote and say what they want to do. We're stepping on way too much. We're going way over what we should be going with the reserves that we have.
Thank you.
The question was how will we pay for the
new Hartman
complex?
facility?
Well, the community has a few options on how we can do that. We have a capital improvement fund. As Bob mentioned earlier, those funds are available for something new or exceptionally large and expansion of our existing amenities. So we have $1,173,055 projected to be in that fund at the end of this year. Projections by the finance department. We also had some monies in our reserve funds that could be used toward that. Any monies in the reserve funds that are for deferred maintenance for those buildings could be used and added to the Hartman, to the capital funds. Other than that, I mean, that brings you to maybe $2 million if you're lucky. The estimates are $5 million plus, not including our permitting process, the landscaping, much of the landscaping, or the furnishing of the building. So you know what kind of a price tag you're going to have for that. So it's going to either be loans or special assessments. My concern for that, for the community, is we have underfunded reserves. We have an inappropriate, unreliable reserve study in place, and we're going to put ourselves in a very difficult position financially if we move ahead with this.
Thank you. Bruce.
I think the groundwork has been laid and that we're on good financial footing to take care of the Hartman building. As been mentioned, with the capital fund and the reserve fund, when the time comes, we should be able to pay for nearly half the building in cash. And I have no problem with looking for a loan at that time. The money that's been put aside into those funds could be moved and used to down pay the mortgage on the new building. And I think it's more important that we need to be prudent in our planning, but we need to keep moving ahead. The longer that we wait and the longer that we delay, the more the building will ultimately cost us. So if we could have the money half put aside and borrow half to buy a house with a 50% down and money, regular income to pay for that, seems like a sensible thing to me.
Thank you. Bob.
Well, obviously, there's been no secret right from the start that we are going to have to take a loan out to pay for part of the cost of the Hartman facility. The board has been looking at this for several years now. We don't have the loan specifics yet, but the board has been told and I believe from the financial people that have talked to us, that the debt service, any debt service for the Hartman facility can be handled within our current budget, within our current assessments. By what we're putting into the capital fund every year now, we would be able to control and handle the debt service as well as continue to contribute to the fund. Now, contrary to what some people may believe, every member of the board of directors owns a home here. Every one of us pays assessments, and every one of us would be subject to special assessments. I'm on a fixed income, I'm retired. I'm not going to assess myself to a point where it's going to create hardships, nor do I want to assess anyone else to a point where it's going to assess hardships. If I thought that this was not doable, if I had any reservations at all that we would not be able to handle it, I wouldn't be for it. It's that simple, because it affects me as well.
Thank you. Next question for Bruce. Would you be willing to participate in a debate-style forum with relevant issues moderated by our election committee?
I would be willing to participate, sure, if that's what the community decided. I would question that with our current state of affairs here in our community and the divisions with our community, that a debate might be more dividing than it would be uniting. So I would have that reservation. But if it was done in a way that would provide more information to the community and better idea of who the candidates are, I would be willing to consider that.
Thank you. I did get out of order. Sorry, Inga.
Sorry,
I got distracted here. Bob?
You want to answer?
No, go ahead. Why don't you?
Okay. I would have no problem participating in a debate-style format. I think it would give the candidates an opportunity to ask each other questions and how they feel about issues, and to, instead of just answering the questions and just sitting back and saying, okay, fine, at least being able to back up what you say as what I say as a candidate, and defend what I say as a candidate. I agree with Bruce, though, that under the current situation, it may not be the best of ideas, but I'd be more than willing to participate in a debate-style format.
Thank you. Kay?
I would be willing to participate. I think it would be good. I think it would be healthy. And to be able to talk to each other and ask, how are you coming up with this? So I think that would be good.
Okay, thank you. Inga?
I think it's a great idea. I think sometimes we have opinions that are not based on knowledge. And I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about reserve studies. I would love to see a community forum where a knowledgeable person would explain that the reserve fund process to the community. A very simple example of reserve fund savings is if you know you have a roof that needs to be replaced in 10 years and it's going to cost $10,000, you put $1,000 away every year, and bingo, when those 10 years when that comes about, you're going to have $10,000 to pay for your roof. We don't have the money to pay for all the amenities that need repair work, and you only have to look at the community to see that that's so.
All right, thank you. Inga, I'm going to start with you this time. Have you been on a board in the past, and if so, how large was the membership, and was the property run by a property management company? Yes.
I've always been active in my community, but I've never been on a board before.
Thank you. Bruce?
Not on a homeowner's board.
Bob?
Yes. No. Yes to the board, no to a management company. This is the only board I've ever said.
Okay.
And I have been on a board, and I'm not sure that I remember what the question was, but I have been on a board in Katati, and we did have a management company. And that management company did take care of all the financials, and they did a very good job. We consulted before we made any moves, and we also had a lot of voting on things that we had decided to do. we included the community, and we were able to roof 2 very long blocks of houses, repaint everything, and slurry the parking areas without 1 penny of special assessments because of planning and voting and doing it right.
Thank you. Okay, Bob, this is for you.
I'm sorry, part of that question was how large was the community?
Did you want to answer that, Kay? How large?
It was over 100 units. It wasn't real big, but we did have 2 swimming pools, and so we had, and lots of trees that we had to deal with. So,
thank you, Bob. Does the board's budget-making process serve the best interests of the community?
The board, that's an interesting question because the board does not make the budget. The board adopts the budget that is contributed to by a number of entities within the community. Every committee prepares a budget request, staff prepares a budget request, and they come before the finance committee to be fine-tuned, to be changed, to be adjusted, and then they come to the board for the final decisions. So to say that the board makes the budget is really kind of a misnomer. We take the budget that's handed to us, we make final adjustments to it, and then we vote on it. We may add certain things, we may subtract certain things, but we get involved at the very end of a very long, very detailed and budget process that includes a lot of people. For example, I'm going to make a couple examples. Number one, the golf course. Staff is who tells us how much it costs to run the golf course. It's not the board saying we're going to give them this much money. Staff is telling us what it costs, the same as they tell us what the utility costs and maintenance costs are for other amenities. There's been a lot of talk about how come there's no money in the budget for the teen center. Well, the Commons Committee decided for whatever reason not to ask for any money for the teen center in this year's budget. So if it wasn't asked for, it's not considered. That's how the budget system works. It comes from committees to the finance committee, from staff to the finance committee, and finally to the board for adoption.
Thank you. I'm going to read the question. Does the board's budget-making process serve the best interests of the community?
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because you're not serving the community by allowing them to have input. There's a lot of secrecy, and I feel that our community who pays the bills should have more input on what we're doing. They should have more input on how we're running this and what we want to have.
Thank you. Inga?
Well, I agree with Bob. The board doesn't make the budget. The board, however, approves the policies that are used to formulate the budget. And I don't think our current process has been a good one. I think it's actually a tad better than it had been in some respects. As Mike and I were thinking about, well, what kind of questions are they going to ask us? Because we need to think about how we're going to answer those questions. And he asked me how did the interaction between committees and the board and the staff work for us. And as I was thinking about that problem, or that process, I was thinking about how until this year, most of the committee requests were for long overdue maintenance items. So one thing that we haven't been doing well is having maintenance in our operating budget. An example of that was the solar beams on the lake. They weren't working for some time. We didn't even know it. So that's a problem. As I've harped on for a while, I think the reserve budget is a problem. And so I think our budget process could use lots of improvement. And I would hope that maintenance would be core maintenance would be low budget. Core maintenance would all be in the operating budget. All of our items would be in the all of our items that are appropriate for the reserve budget would be in the reserve budget. Currently, our lake and dam are not in the reserve budget. There's a valve on the dam that's in the reserve budget, and the solar bees now are, but there's a lot missing from our reserve budget. So I think having a professional come and do a reserve budget for us will give a much better perspective on what our financial situation actually is.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, I think the current process does serve the best interest of the members. I heard Inga mention until this year, so that must mean that some things are getting better this year. You know, we can't go back and change what's in the past, but we could look at what we want to do going forward. The whole way that the budget rolls up from the committees and the staff to the board. I attended this year's budget workshop where each committee chairperson presented their items to the board. I heard there were a lot of people in the room. I heard lots and lots of public comments about what a great process it is, how open it was this year, how nice we've taken this back now. Also attended a couple finance committee meetings where they discussed all these items of the budget. All these meetings were open to the public. Everyone was welcome to come attend. So I think there are several opportunities for the public to get involved, for the members to get involved, to give their input, and then as the budget gradually rolls through the committees to the board and to its final adoption.
Thank you. Next question is to Kay. Are you willing to be honest with the members in regards to any promises made to us?
Absolutely, that's why I'm here. I was approached by members who were telling me about the restaurant. I had no idea. And in looking into it, I see that the members need to have a lot more input than what we have. So I would never say anything to the members that I don't plan on carrying through.
Thank you, Inga.
Who's going to say they're not going to be honest with the members, really? I mean, of course I would be honest with the members. I think honest communication is the only way to go.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, I would agree too, you know, that the main thing that I can promise is how I will conduct myself in the manner that I will try to do business. I can't promise where assessments will go. No one has a crystal ball. We can look at the past, we can look at the planning and everything else. But no, I'm not making any special promises other than that I will commit myself to the job and do the best job that I can. And that way I can stick to my promise.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, if anybody has seen any of my campaign signs, the ones that are left, it says right on there, honesty and integrity, and I take that very seriously. You may not agree with my positions, but my positions are what I believe in. They're what if I'm elected, it's going to be what the people who elect me believe in, and I'm going to support those positions. So I will be very honest about how I act and behave and go forth with this. So yeah, there's honesty and is not a problem.
Thank you. Inga, a question for you. Whether or not elected, how do you plan to reconcile the connections and forums groups in Hidden Valley Lake?
I don't think I have any plans to do that. I'm not in charge of either the forum or the connections. I've seen things that I like and dislike on both sites. I don't need connections anymore after the many character assassinations on myself that I've seen there. So I don't have much in common with connections.
Thank you. Bruce?
Well, I personally have never been on either one and don't really have the time to go to either one. But as I mentioned before, I think the best way is for the leaders at this table to make comments that they don't want the things going on those sites that have been going on. They would put, each of the people at this table would put a statement on there saying that they don't approve of this type of behavior and they would wish it would stop in their name. I think we might see a little bit of a change.
Thank you, Bob.
My wife will back me up on this. I had no plan on ever in my entire life opening a Facebook account. But when I heard about the things that were being said about me and my fellow board members on a certain social media site, I opened up an account so I could see that. What I saw was sad. People who have no idea who I am making comments about my character, making comments about my background. It's sad. Anybody who's read that site can see where people have taken my name and changed it to be derogatory. That's kid stuff. I mean, you know, what responsible adult does that? I have posted on Connections. I have every post that I have absolutely no problem with what I've said because it's been very positive and very upbeat. When I posted today about signs, I posted that I have no idea who took them and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't need to happen. And then I was accused basically on the other side of stealing my own signs to make people look bad. Really? I'm sorry. You know, I have better things to do at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning than go out and steal my own signs or have someone steal my own signs to make someone else look bad. That is so childish, and it's really sad. But as long as there's a First Amendment, as long as people have freedom of speech, they're going to say whatever they want on whatever site they want.
Thank you, Kate.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yes. Whether or not elected, how do you plan to reconcile the connections and forums groups in Hidden Valley Lake?
Yes, I don't plan on reconciling. I know that when you go on to Facebook, people are going to say whatever they're going to say, so I don't take it personal. On Connections, I was put on Connections without my approval, and then when they discovered who I was taken off right away. So I never tried to get back on again. I was there and then I wasn't. So, but whatever people are going to say on Facebook, you can't take that and turn it around to say something that they're not actually saying. And I think a lot of that is the problem too, is that things are being turned around so that it will say what they want it to say so that they're offended. So, you know, I think I'm not worried about it. It doesn't bother me. If people have a problem, they'll come to me. They know that I'll talk to them. No problem.
Thank you. This is going to be our last question before a break. And this question is for you, Bruce. It is a scientific fact that men and women approach problem solving very differently. For this reason, would the board benefit from a gender balance?
Well, I think it...
And never will again. Oh.
I would prefer that there be diversity on the board. I don't know that we need to make it gender diversity, but yes, diversity. The more views and different opinions and styles of working and all those things that we can have, whether they're male or female or wherever they come from, I think they're all good.
Thank you, Bob.
My wife's in the room, so I need to be very careful with what I say. I think the bottom line with the board of directors or any elected body is the person you're talking about. Whether they're male or female or black or white or green or yellow, whether they're gay or straight, regardless of anything, it's the character of the person and what they stand for that's important, and how good a job you think that person is going to do in the job that you in the position that you are electing them to.
Thank you, Kate.
Well, I am in favor of diversity of men and women being on the board. What I'm not in favor of is when you have all people that play golf, all of them are on the board. We need fairness. so that we know that the judgment that they come up with is going to be fair to all. But if you have a board that consists of all golfers, you know that everything is going to be taken care of with the golf course and not so much of the other amenities, which is what's happening now. So that's where my problem is. It's not so much that it's men or women, it's that everybody's fair, and we don't have a whole board that's straight golfers, which nothing against the golfers, but we want to be fair with what we're deciding, and we can't do that. If it's all golfers, it's all going to be golf, and the other amenities are going to fall behind. And a great example is the lake. You know, for all these years, they've put up, let's do this, let's do that, and there's a list of where it's all been, oh, we put off this, oh yeah, we canceled that. Now the lake's filthy, you know, and it's 45 years, it hasn't been cleaned. So they're finally now addressing that, but, you know, had somebody been on the board that it was more even, then we might have been a little more fair with the other amenities. That's just my opinion, so.
Thank you, Inga. Since we're the only two women running and there are currently 6 men on the board, I say yes, we should have gender diversity on the board. But separately from that, I think all personalities have different ways of arriving at decisions. When I was working, every management team, we had a retreat where we learned how to appreciate people who think differently than you do, and I think that kind of a retreat would be great for board members, because Mike and I guaranteed we look at any problem and we see it differently. I think that works well because we complement each other's way of thinking, and that helps us reach a good decision. But I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that he's a man and I'm a woman. I think it has much more to do with a style of decision making. So I think a well-rounded team of people who think differently and arrive at solutions differently is rich fabric for an effective board.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a 10-minute break now. It is approximately 3:22, so we will be back at 3:35. And there are cookies and water and drinks in the adjoining room.
I was looking to meet up with you. Yeah, want some sign? Oh, good. Okay. Okay. Well, I was thinking more than one time.
For the job that they do and the enormity of the task they have. They patrol, there are 6 full-time patrol staff people. On the best coverage, we have 3 patrol cars on a shift. That's rare, and I believe it's on Saturday night in particular. There was no stopping. We were constantly in motion. We responded to a call from a woman who couldn't reach her mom because and she was really concerned, and she asked us to check on her well-being, which we did. We had the incident at the stable where someone called and said they were afraid there was a prowler, that they saw a prowler outside the stables. They patrolled the park. There were people on the beaches that were beyond the hour when they were allowed to be there, and they cleared them from the beaches. I thought the staff was respectful despite some incidents of lack of respect on the part of the members. They relieve the guard shack personnel for their breaks. So I think for the number of people we have working, they're doing a really great job. I know Director Rust requested an additional 2 part-time staff people, and the Finance Committee is recommending that we not hire them. The rationale given is that we currently have 2 open positions. I think if we're not happy with the coverage of the security staff, we really need to listen to the expert in our community and seriously consider his recommendations. Thank you.
Bruce? Sure. How do you feel about our security department's current personnel and performance to the community?
I think security is very important to our association. We've been doing a lot of talk about the golf course and about the lake and some of the other amenities. In my mind, our security department really is our largest amenity. We spend the most money on security than we spend for any of our other amenities. Generally, I'm in support of our security. I think watching the last budget process, there were quite a few requests from security for upgrades, both in staffing, in the pay, and their equipment. And I'm generally in favor of that. We want to be as best prepared as we can. I'm a little concerned with the move to the central command and the money that was supposed to save our association. As that is continuing in its process, it looks like there are a few things that have been missed, requests for extra staffing on weekends, some other backups, and the cost for that is gradually creeping up. So I'm still in support of that, but I think that's something that we need to watch. But in general, I'm in favor of upgrades for our equipment and our staff and general support of our security department.
Thank you.
As a member of the board, I cannot comment on personnel issues or personnel matters. That is the preview of the general manager and of staff, not of the board. We have no control over personnel. So, speaking as a member, every time I have had contact with a member of our security staff, I've been treated respectfully, had my issues listened to, and properly dealt with.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next is for Inga. Should board members be allowed to use their official positions to advocate for or against candidates in board elections other than for themselves, of course?
Absolutely not. And we've had a prime example of the misuse of the office when Susan Cameron wrote letters using the letterhead that identified herself as the HVLA treasurer, advocating a certain position on the recall election. She actually sent out not real ballots, but paper that looked like real ballots and told people how to vote. I think that's despicable. In addition to that, she wrote another letter to non-resident members identifying all of the things that one of her fellow board members, in her opinion, has done wrong. I think it's a disgrace. I'm really surprised that there was no board action taken on that indiscretion.
Okay, Bruce?
Okay, I think there have been abuses in the past on both sides, actually. I myself would refrain. I think if a candidate or a board member wants to get involved, I think it's crucial that they very clearly show that their involvement is as a individual member, not in any way representing the board. And that's oftentimes a gray area
getting involved in any way, shape, or form as a city board member. I never spoke about pro or con for any board member while I was on the board. I never had any signs in my house. It's an individual decision that board members make. It is, like I said, a very, very slippery slope. You've got to make sure that you state that this is your own opinion. What other board members do is on them, and but it is not something that I would ever do.
Okay.
And like Inga, I feel the same way. I think it was terrible. Susan Cameron's letter I do have on me, and I feel that to do something like that under color of authority and then sign it with the letterhead treasurer was a terrible, terrible thing to do, and I would never do it. So, and I'm very disappointed that something wasn't put into play that she was punished for doing something like this. I know that this is very unethical. So, and a lot of the things in there that, I mean, they were trumped up. So, yeah, I'm very much against something like that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Bruce. Looking around this room, I see lots of gray, white hair. What percent of homes have children, and how are you planning to make HVLA a welcoming place for them? I think that means children. Look, okay, not the first part, okay. What percent of homes have children, and how are you planning to make HVLA a welcoming place for them? And I believe the them means the younger people and the children.
I have to admit, I don't know the exact percentage of homes with children in Valley Lake. I do know, compared to some of the other, like Boise Cascade developments, that we have the most diversity of age. There's been a lot of comparison with Lake Wildwood and Lake of the Pines, and we have the most diversity of age. We have the younger population. We're not a senior population. When I first moved here, there were a lot more seniors. It's been very nice over the last 10 years to see a lot of families move into the community. And I think our association has been working well to make activities for those families. They have the music on the green, the teen center. A lot of things have happened in the last year. Family movie nights, a lot of different events that the association is putting on. So I would encourage the association to continue looking for ways to involve families in events for our association.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kaminsky.
I also don't have the exact number, but knowing the exact percentage I don't think is important. It doesn't matter if it's 10% or 80%. The important thing is to make sure that we have things for our kids to do. And we do have things for our kids to do. Whether it's the Easter egg hunt or pumpkin night, spooks or scary, whatever that thing's called that they do at Halloween. Whether it's the Easter egg hunt that they have. There's a lot of events and more events every year being planned with our kids in mind. The improvements up at Raven Hill Park with the new goalposts, and hopefully they've got the right ones up there now, not football ones, but soccer ones. And the inclusion of a real bathroom at Raven Hill Park shows that we're listening to the younger members and we're reacting to what they're asking for. We have a swim team. We have a Little League field that we not only use for members' children, but also for children in the community. One of the misconceptions is that I've heard discussion about we need to leave our pool open all year so that the high school can have a swim team. Although the idea makes sense, and it's not necessarily a bad idea, it is not, in my opinion, as a longtime high school coach, and having coached at Middletown High School for 10 years, it is not the responsibility of the Hidden Valley Lake provide amenities or to provide facilities for the athletic programs at Middletown High School. That's not our job. That's the high school's job. If we have something they are able to use and it works within our guidelines, then that's super. But to make special arrangements for high school teams is not the responsibility of HVLA. It's the responsibility of Middletown High School.
I don't believe we're that kid friendly. I think that the amount of families we have here now are probably 50%, 50-50 young families versus older adults. And we really don't have it kid friendly to speak of. You don't want to wait for a year to have something to do, an Easter egg hunt, Halloween and all that one time a year. You want to have something that's out there that makes people that move to Hidden Valley Lake go, wow, they have batting cages, or they have a skateboard park, or they have water slides. We have to have something for them. And yet we're looking at putting all this money into the golf, into this fancy restaurant, when we should be looking at, we don't really need a fancy restaurant. We can get something that will make do, that will suffice for these demographics here, and put something in for the kids, because right now, if you look at it, there's a teen center, but most of that stuff in there was donated, and it's used computers, that could have been, I walked through it today, and I wasn't real impressed. I'd like to see something more for the kids. Let's get out there, save our money where we can save it via the restaurant, and put something out there for the kids.
You got it?
The largest percentage of residents in our community are families with children. I think we do a number of good things. Some of the things that Bob mentioned, some of the things that Kay mentioned. We have the adventure camp. Connie, our rec director, plans a number of nice summer programs for our younger children. We have the arts and crafts. I think the most neglected group in our community are our teens. And yes, we do have a teen center, but go take a look at it. It's a disgrace. And I know there's been some efforts to raise funds by doing garage sales and things like that, and bake sales. And I think those are wonderful things to do. However, we as a community owe it to all of our residents to provide a suitable place for recreation. We have a huge unused space. It's been unused forever, or at least 5.5 years I've been here. And it's very suitable for a teen center. Mr. Komeski said earlier, why didn't the Commons Committee ask for a teen center? Our understanding has been for the last 3 years that a teen center was going to be part of the initial renovation of this building, doing just enough things to keep this building usable. And the plan was to put a teen center over here. Now, the Commons Committee has been assured that this has been in the works for the last 2 years by our previous general manager, and it's never come to fruition. We're all very disappointed in that. I don't know what, I believe the plan for the teen center, which is on an open porch now, is that they're going to board it up and have some activities in that space for the teens and some activities on the dance floor. But if we can spend $5 million on a restaurant, can't we spend a little bit on our teens for a permanent year-round teen center?
Okay, thank you. All right, this is for you, Bob, and I'm going to combine this question because both of them apply to Valley Oaks. So the first part is, would the Valley Oaks development be good or bad for Hidden Valley? And the other portion of it would apply to, would they be allowed access to our gated amenities? And if so, how would we propose to charge them for it?
This question was basically asked the other night, and my answer was then as it is now. I have really no opinion on the Valley Oaks project. What the developer, I believe his name is Porter, does with his property is up to him.
uncertainty with that, since it is new and we don't know much about it, but there's also potential positives. Ken Porter has developed a commercial retail space and could add to the value of living here. Clientele that buy the homes might want to join the golf course and cut down on the deficit. The thing is that being open to the public, you have a golf course and restaurant that are open to the public, and they need to be run as businesses on a profit and loss basis. So this is something that we would have to really look at so that we are not continuing to pull them out of the red to the tune of $750,000 a year out of our dues. We would have to look at how are we gonna profit here? And certainly not with a huge restaurant when we're already paying $750,000 a year in losses on the little restaurant. And then, oh, you know what, we want a great big restaurant. What are you gonna pay them? So, you know, it is open to the public business. And so we would have to really look at that.
You got it?
Read the question one more time, please.
Okay, the first part, would the Hidden Valley Oaks development be good or bad for Hidden Valley? And then the second part was, if it were to have access to would it have access to our gated amenities? Notice it says gated amenities. And if they did have access, how would the association be able to charge them for usage of our amenities and infrastructure?
Well, I can see certainly some pluses to the Valley Oaks development as I understand the plans for it. For one thing, it would increase the tax base for Lake County. That's always a good thing. And it's a senior community, so they wouldn't be using all of our infrastructure like our schools. So we get the benefit of their taxes without them using our schools. That's a good thing. A plus 55 community has the potential for increasing our golf course membership a lot, and I think that would be a great thing. I've heard some people say, as long as they don't mess with my tee times, it's okay, which I think is a very short-sighted attitude on the part of golfers, because additional members for our golf course could really reduce our subsidy to the golf course. They're also planning an assisted living facility and a commercial center, as far as I know. And I understand that Cindy Spears is going to meet with Ken Porter. I assume she's doing that by the request of the board, because I don't think it's up. I mean, she takes orders from the board. So whatever decision we make about internal amenities is something that is a contractual agreement. So our board would have every opportunity to make decisions related to that. Hopefully they'd ask the community too.
Okay, thank you. Bruce?
Okay, I'm not really up to date on what they're planning for Valley Oaks. I'm not liking, I don't have any information about the types of development and whether it's senior and all that sort of thing, so I really can't comment whether it's good or bad. The things that I think of when I hear about a new development coming are, what are the number of houses, and will that flood houses on our market and thus lower our own home prices with an oversupply of houses?
Bruce, can you move the microphone a little bit more, a little bit closer to you? It's not getting fully picked up on the recording. Even a little bit more, please. Sorry. How's that? Okay, thank you. Okay, Kay, you're first. What would you do about rising crime in Hidden Valley Lake? The marijuana issue is becoming more of a problem in HVL. Can the security department work with the sheriff's department on this? Sorry.
Well, the rising crime, when somebody is caught, they know they can run away from security. Having a sheriff hired for, I think it's a few nights a week, they've decided to have the sheriff. The sheriff can do something. So, you know, it's good to have somebody that can actually make an arrest and catch these people. But also, I think that they need to hold the parents responsible. When kids do this, you're automatically going to pay to fix it, not us, not the other homeowners. So I hope I've got that question right. But yeah, I think that, you know, the parent should be responsible, and I think that having a sheriff out to be able to make the arrest and not just observe, and it's nothing against security, they have to not get involved in, you know, making an arrest. So yeah.
Yeah.
I was discussing this issue with Director Russ. He said that most of the crime that the community is experiencing is property crime, which I guess is better than violent crime. He is our expert on safety and security. He's requested some additional staff positions, which the Finance Committee has recommended that we not fill. I think that's a mistake. As far as bringing the sheriff into our community, I think that's a mistake as well. We already pay our taxes. We're entitled to sheriff services here. And I believe the sheriff's department takes care of marijuana issues. We have laws in the county that need to be obeyed, and that's what the sheriff's department is for. So I wouldn't, although I've had nothing but positive interactions with the sheriffs who've been in our meetings, I don't like the idea of paying them overtime to be here, and that's what it would be if we contracted with the sheriff's department for staff to be on site. And yeah, I think that's it.
Bruce?
I would be interested in seeing what our crime statistics are. I've been at a couple meetings with the security department, and the chief has mentioned that the crime is up slightly, but it's still not a major issue. It's much lower than it is everywhere else in Lake County. So I think it's important, and it's something to be aware of and to watch. But whether we have an epidemic problem or anything like that, I don't believe we do. In terms of working with the sheriff, I think better coordination is needed with the sheriff. There are things going on right now with the general manager and with security, with the chief, to work with the sheriff and the board of supervisors to try to get better coverage here at Hidden Valley Lake. I agree with Inga. I think we already pay a good fair check of taxes to the county, and we really shouldn't be paying for additional coverage, but we should be negotiating to try to get better coverage based on the taxes that we already pay. And that is the job of the sheriff. I wouldn't try to have our security forces doing what the sheriff should be doing.
Hidden Valley Lake, according to the current sheriff, Rivero, has the lowest crime rate in Lake County. That was the statement he made at the safety and security meeting several months ago. So obviously, the sheriff's office is going to patrol areas where there's a higher instance of crime than there is in Hidden Valley Lake. That's why we don't get the coverage that we should get. And it's not just the sheriff, but there's other county services that they kind of ignore us because we're so self-sustaining. security department has a certain number of positions. One of them has not been filled for a long period of time. That's a decision that's between the security director and the general manager. Again, the board has nothing to do with whether positions are filled or not. That is a staff decision. It's not a board of directors decision. And it's important to remember in these kind of issues that the staff or the board has one employee, and that's the general manager. The general manager is in charge with department heads of all other employees. And unlike what was said earlier, the general manager does not have to get permission from the board of directors to discuss issues with the appropriate people. That's part of her job of running this community. The board of directors did not tell her to go meet with Ken Porter, or we do not tell her to meet with the board of supervisors, or we do not tell her to do her job. We hired her to do her job, and as long as she's doing her job, we stay out of it. We don't supervise her every move. So to suggest that we are telling her exactly what to do is not the truth. We hire her, we count on her knowledge, her experience, and her expertise to do the best job possible for this association, and she's doing that.
Okay. Next person up is what are the three most important attributes or skills that you believe you would bring to the board if elected? And if so, how do you believe those skills will contribute to the accomplishments of our community's goals?
I didn't understand the last part.
Okay, sorry, I'm a bit of a sore throat. Okay, and if so, how do you believe those skills will contribute to the accomplishments of our community's goals?
Well, one of the goals for the community, I think that is generally accepted by the membership, is a desire for better relationships among the members. And I think my advocacy for listening to the membership and responding to membership would be one skill. It's not a skill, it's a person, it's an ability to relate to people. And I do think I have that. And I think that would be very useful in the community. Another, it's not really a skill, but personality trait that I have is when I'm learning something new, I try to educate myself in every way on how to best deal with that situation. And I guess the third thing I would say is I've got common sense, and I think common sense goes a long way to making good decisions.
Thank you. Bruce?
My first attribute, I think, would be my past management experience. For 25 years, I've been a manager in several different careers and organizations. The last two were nonprofits that had large budgets, almost similar to the budget here, around $8 million. So I'm experienced working with budgets, breaking them down, finding out how they get put back together, dealing with the large dollar numbers, and having personal responsibility for many of the numbers in that budget. So I think that will help me dealing with the association's finance and during the budgeting process, have a little bit of background going in. My other management position was in customer
people may not agree with that, but I spent many years during my career as a fire captain, as a union negotiator. And union negotiations between public safety departments and cities do not always go well. So you need to learn to compromise. And for anyone who doesn't know, the definition of compromise is when both parties are equally disappointed. So that's a very, very important attribute. The second one is my ability to problem solve. That's what I did. I took chaos and made order out of it. While everybody was running away from something, I was running toward it to deal with the issue. And I think that's a very strong attribute to have in this position as a member of the board. And finally, as I believe I've got good common sense. I listen, I pay attention, I make decisions based on the information I'm given. I don't have preconceived notions, and I think that's all part of common sense. So those are the three that I would describe.
Okay, Kate. When I was vice president of the board in Katani, we always included the members in. We always had them vote on things. We even voted on whether we should give a maintenance man a certain amount for Christmas. You know, it was just everybody was involved. So I think having them involved in decisions that are very important to them should happen. They should be able to vote. It's really worked for us down there. And then transparency, no secrets. They pay the bills. Let's talk about it. Don't be so secretive. There's no reason for it. So that's really, really important. It worked for us. We never had a problem. We had very happy people down there that were very happy with us. So, and because we included them and they voted. So that's what I feel we need to bring to this, is allow that. And I don't think you'll have a division.
Okay, thank you. All right, Bruce. Other than the membership vote on fiscal issues, what ways do you differ from all the other candidates? And how would this benefit all of the community members? Again, I'll repeat the beginning. Other than a membership vote on fiscal issues, what ways do you differ from all the other candidates, and how would this benefit all of the community members?
Well, I think one of the ways that I differ is my opinion of the reserve study. That I have faith in our current reserve study. I think having it done by staff was a blessing. Having that intimate knowledge of our local community, our local association, all the pieces that go into that, having them locally priced, locally sourced. I think all that was a good idea. My understanding is that when the board was presented with that, they were very happy. They were elated, in fact, that they weren't presented with the standard consultant reserve study that they had gotten in the past. So I think the value and the work that's gone into it and the credibility of the reserve study is a big difference between us. I think other issues like the golf course, I do want to reduce the amount that goes to the golf course, the amount that goes to food and beverage. We do want to take care of all the amenities. So on many of the other issues, I think we're really in pretty close agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Bob? My answer is very simple, very easy. Here.
Here.
All the other candidates have some and I don't. How does that benefit the guy? Oh, that part is tough. I think the number one way that I differ from the other candidates is that I have a proven track record as a member of the board of being a moderator. I've been accused of being a member of, to coin a term, the majority five. If you look at the against the contract for the former general manager as a consultant, but I was characterized as having voted for it as a member of the majority five. I'm not a member of any group. I'm an independent. I listen to what the issues are. I make my best decision based on what my knowledge is. And in that matter, I knew who our new general manager was going to be. I knew that she was more than capable to handle the situation that we were going to give her. So that's why I voted against it. But after the was voted in, I supported it as my responsibility as a member of the board. But I think my independence, I think I'm very much moderate, and I think those are all qualities that differ me from maybe the other members of the board, but I am definitely will speak my own mind.
Okay?
Can you repeat that question? Because I'm not sure if you said the board or candidates.
I believe it says candidates, but I will read it again. Okay. Other than a membership vote on fiscal issues, what ways do you differ from all the other candidates? And how would this benefit all the community members? So in other words, how do you differ from your other three
Okay.
at this table?
Well, I don't differ that much from Inga. We're pretty much on the same page. But as far as the others, I believe in a reserve study, and I believe in a professional reserve study. I don't think it's a good thing to have somebody that's managing the funds to also do their own reserve study. I feel like it should be done by an outside professional reserve study. And then the amenities, I feel like, and I'm sure Nico's probably on the same page with that too, but I feel that the lake should be number one. That should be addressed right now. And there's all the other ones that need care, and those should come in before we even think of doing a restaurant. I believe, and I'm not positive, but I think that all that's required in a golf course is a snack shack. And so a restaurant, okay, but not a huge restaurant. So I am in disagreement with the rest of the board with that. But that's where I stand on that. I mean, it's very important to have a reserve study, let the people vote, and so I am all for that.
Okay, you go.
Well, I think we all have some things in common, and I can't really think of, first of all, I don't know Bruce and Rob or Kay well enough to know how I'm totally different from them. I think that one thing that I strongly believe in is in planning and in involving the membership in the overall plan and vision of what kind of community are we and where do we want to go with that as a starting point. Separately from that, I think that like Kay, we have concerns about our budget process. And so it's a hard question. I guess the two things that are really important to me are a good planning process, solid budget, and third is in trying to, together with the community, build a sense of community where we all respect each other's interests and where all our resources are used to equally fund the various amenities that we have, and that all age groups are important. So I think when we all feel fairly treated, we can all like each other, and I think that's really important. And I think nothing would benefit our community more than mutual respect and trust of each other.
Okay, thank you. annual assessments and why?
A reasonable increase in our annual assessments is what it takes to keep this operation going. Costs go up every year. Insurance goes up incredibly a lot. The cost of utilities goes up. The cost of doing business goes up. A reasonable assessment increase is what it takes to maintain our amenities, to make contributions to the reserve and capital improvement funds, and to pay our bills. It is projected that over the next several years, during my next tenure on the board, that assessments are projected to go up between 2 and 3% a year. I think that is a very, very valid projection. I think that the comments that assessments will go up 20%, we'll have special assessments, you're going to lose your house, are just scare and fear tactics that have no basis in fact. No one on this board that I've been on has mentioned special assessments, except in the case of some unforeseen calamity that would happen. And I couldn't even, an earthquake, something like that, that would cause us to have to enforce or impose a special assessment. Our assessments go up as little as possible. That's the responsibility of the board. That is what this board is trying to do. They didn't go up at all the first 2 years I was on the board. They went up 2% last year. We're looking at a 2.5%, 2.75% increase this year, maybe less. That's $3 to $4 a month. So no major increases.
Okay. You know, I think that what you want to try to do is keep the assessments down, and because people are struggling still to get by. But I don't feel like, you know, if you're going to put this money into this loan, and then all your future assessments are promised to that loan, that's what we all agree on. Future assessments are promised to that loan. Okay, so all the future assessments are promised to the loan. Whatever's left is what we have to work on. So that's going to be paying wages, upkeep, maintenance. All that is what we're going to have left to work on. If anything happens, any big emergency happens, where are we going to get the money to take care of that? That's already promised to a big loan. So we would have to special assess. If you have to special assess and people can't afford to pay that special assessment that each homeowner, each property would get, then you're going to have a problem. And it may force people to have to sell their homes. And so that's what we have to worry about. We have to be careful. Reserves that are down around 20% is a danger zone. So if we had reserves that were way high up there, you know, 70 to 100%, you know, we'd be saying, okay, good, whatever. If you didn't lose $750,000 a year with the restaurant and the golf course, then that would be a whole different scenario. But we're not in that position. So I feel we should keep our assessments as low as we can because we still have people struggling. But let's not take risks either. And that is a huge risk.
The question of what was the question?
In your perception, what is a reasonable increase in our annual assessments and why?
Okay, well, it's very difficult to say what is a reasonable assessment increase until you know what the situation in our financial picture, before we know the full details on our financial situation. First issue with that is we don't have a credible reserve study. So that would be a big factor. Bob mentioned the scare tactics of increasing our assessments by 20%. I think the point that was made is that the board may, without a community vote, increase assessments by 20%. all hope that that would never be necessary. Um, an interesting little fact about the postcard war that we've had recently is that we sent out this side, I hate to say size, but it is this side, sent out a postcard with a graph on it, and we had a question mark at the top. That graph represented a 2 to 3% increase. Then that side sent out a postcard with our little graph on it and their big graph on it, and sort of an accusatory Inga and Kay's predictions. And I think if anything, their prediction was 2 to 3%. Our prediction was 2 to 3%. Ours is a tad more accurate because we had a question mark, because you really don't know. So I do think your assessment should be based on the needs of the community, based on credible budgets. Thank you.
Bruce? Oh, I agree with the statement that they need to be based on what they need to be based on reasonable budgeting. I would start each budget cycle looking at a zero increase. How can we get by on a zero increase? As Bob mentions, cost of living, things do go up. We are able to mitigate some of those costs with savings and best practices and things like that, but the fact is that costs do go up. So I think with careful planning and budgeting, keeping any increase below the cost of living would be my major goal, and I think it is possible based on our track record and our planning for the future.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I think we answered that question. Oh, this is one. Okay.
I was going to ask you one. What's your view on year-round pool operation?
I think the pool should be open year-round. When we were in high school, we swam all year. It didn't bother us a bit. Bothers me a lot now, but you know, the kids, that's another thing, just having something open for the kids, heated. The pool's there, why let it sit and be inoperable all year? It's there, let's use it. You know, it's worth it for the kids to be able to get out and swim. And if another high school team can use it, great. You know, let's do it. Let's swim all year, heated.
I think it should get cold, cold water. I would love to see year-round swimming available. I also know that it's very expensive to heat a large pool like ours in the wintertime. There are people who are willing to swim when it's really cold, as long as there's a minimal temperature of 80 degrees. If we had a reasonable number of people who would be interested in a membership for which there would be a fee that would allow for year-round swimming, I would say, yay, go for it. I think probably we would have to supplement that to some degree as we do our other amenities, but I know there are many people in our community whose only reasonable exercise program is swimming because of the variety of physical issues. So if that were possible, I would say yes. I think we need numbers. I think we need numbers for costs. We need numbers to see how many people would be interested in this. But I think at the very least, and I believe we're going to try to do that this year, is keep the pool open as long as weather permits. That seems like a reasonable thing, and having card access to the pool will reduce the cost of staff to facilitate that. So that's my point of view.
Okay.
Bruce? Yes, I would be in favor of considering year-round operations. Every time I come to a meeting here, like today, and I walk by the pool, I'm very jealous of the people that are out swimming in the pool. I think if it was year-round, there would be less use by the kids, or they'd be in school, but I do hear a lot of members talk about liking to lap swim and use the pool for exercise, like we say, for therapy and exercise. So I would be in favor of it. I think the staffing is an issue, but we're partly going to take care of that with the new pass key system. And then there would be the extra cost, some extra cost, I
members are willing to step up and buy memberships, like Inga said, and the costs could be figured out so that it was fair both to the members and to the association, I think that could be very, very doable. But there has to be study on it. There has to be a survey on it, a good survey on it, and find out if it is in reality a feasible option.
All right, well, thank you. We've reached the end of the questions, and each candidate will now have 5 minutes to close. And Inga?
First.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, Abraham Lincoln said, elections belong to the people. It's their decision if they decide to turn their back on the fire and burn their behind, and they will just have to sit on their blisters. This community is torn and fragmented as reflected by the very close results of the recent recall election. The results clearly demonstrate a very serious division. I see everyone waiting for the other guy to make peace, but I do not see anyone really willing to compromise. The process of reconciliation must start with the board. I am running to lead that change. I'm running for this board to actively restore trust and unity to our beautiful community. But it will take commitment, compromise, and hard work from all members of the board to accomplish this. I promise to do my part. My action plan to restore our sense of community and goodwill toward each other is to begin by allowing owner members a vote on an affordable Hartman project. This is the defining difference between Kay and myself and Bruce and Bob. We are promising that we will vote in favor of allowing members the right to vote. And they are saying they will only do so if the lawyer or the lenders tell them they must. Bruce and Bob are asking you to vote in this election, vote for them in this election, so that they may then turn around and deny you a vote on how millions of your dollars are spent. We must offer a reasonable choice to the people who will be obligated to pay for this new building. This is the only ethical way forward. Many communities engage residents in the decision-making process on major financial projects, and we can and should do the same. There's no doubt Hartman needs to be rebuilt, but it should be done with the community, not despite the community. It's the right thing to do. And that is the kind of director I will be if elected. There's a lot to learn in order to be an effective board member. Better to understand our community, I have toured all our amenities and conferred with members who use them frequently. I have earned a certification through the Community Association Institute, and I will continue my director education on an ongoing basis. The campaign should be about the important issues facing our community. Gross exaggerations and outright lies distract everyone from these issues. It does hurt when people call me names and make false accusations, but it will not deter me from going forward with dignity and integrity to serve this community as an elected director. In closing, I can only say, every election is determined by the people who show up. Please show up and please vote for me. Thank you to the Elections Committee for making this possible, and thank you all for your consideration.
Okay.
Thank you for spending this afternoon with us candidates for the HVLA board. It shows how much you care about our community and its future. I am running because I deeply care about how our community and association are run. Our association needs to do far more to ensure all of its members' interests are served and association property protected. Information about board meetings and decisions should be more readily available than they currently are. The board should welcome member feedback using it to help our community prosper and thrive. Although the association conducted a member survey concerning the Greenview restaurant and related culinary operations several months ago. The results have yet to be released. Neither has the food and beverage business study been released despite having been in the works for months. This crucial information was supposed to inform the plans for the Hartman Center before any contracts were signed. Instead, the board has authorized spending an additional $500,000 on architectural and engineering plans for this building without the benefit of this important member and expert consultant feedback. Member assessments provide the lion's share of our association's revenue. Shouldn't members have the right to say how their money is spent on major capital improvement projects? For this reason, I fully support a member vote on the Hartman Event Center project. I also support having a reserve study performed as soon as possible by an independent reserve specialist so the community can know the full extent of the association's liabilities it is obligated to repair, replace, and maintain. This figure, estimated to total $21 million in 2006, was reduced to an unrealistically low number of $9.5 million by our previous general manager. This reserve liability figure impacts how much the community can afford to pay for the Hartman and community center projects, and thus is vitally important to know as soon as possible. The risk our association runs by not knowing this number is all too real prospect of having to impose a special assessment to pay for the Hartman Event Center. As I stated earlier this afternoon, I promise to serve all of Hidden Valley Lake's residents and members with dignity and respect, and not just a chosen few. Our community has had great potential. Join me in helping to make the Hidden Valley Lake even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
First of all, I want to apologize for getting up and leaving. I didn't mean to be rude, but to have stayed here would have been much more rude. Thank you again for giving up your Sunday afternoon. I'm sure just about everybody had someplace else they much rather would have been, except us. The difference in the candidates is very clear. On one side, you have positive ideas, factual information, and actual plans. On the other side, you have scare tactics and assessments out of control, special assessments, losing home, a board of directors which is breaking the law, and nothing but gloom and doom. This is unfortunate, but these are your choices. It is amazing that every question, out of 28 questions, 23 of them came down to the golf course with Ms. Lopez. No matter what the question was. Ms. Rankin and Ms. Lopez have stated that the subsidy for the golf course should be capped at a certain number of roughly $250,000. This sounds good until you reach that number in July or August. And what do? Shut it down? Stop maintaining it? You don't have answers, just rhetoric. Would they apply a similar cap to every amenity? They say they want to treat amenities equally. Would they apply a similar cap to every amenity or just the golf course? They don't say. Hopefully in the next year, ground will be broken on a new Hartman facility, and the people of Hidden Valley Lake will start to see progress being made. Also, hopefully, we will see the start of the sediment removal from the lake, as well as continuing improvements to all of our amenities. Returning me to the board of directors for 3 more years of service to this community will help to ensure that these things happen. I have stated that I am running on my record over the past 3 years and have promised honesty and integrity. My answers today have been honest and from the heart. I ask you to exercise your right to vote. You want to vote? Vote. Use the power of the ballot box to promote your ideas. If you agree with my ideas and my views on the issues, I ask you to vote for me. If you do not, vote for the candidate who reflects what you believe. Thanks to Kathy, Joseph, and Joy for their outstanding job on both forums. And again, thank you for your participation in your community. If you have further questions you would like answered, please feel free to email me, and I will be glad to answer them. I won't be available to stay afterwards as I'm leaving for Santa Rosa for my grandson's 16th birthday party. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce.
Thank you all for sticking it out to the end. Hopefully now you have a better idea of who your candidates are and what they represent. In closing, I'd like to give a brief summary of my qualifications and views. As I mentioned, I've lived in Hidden Valley Valley Lake because of the variety of amenities that are here. Our governing documents clearly state the association and board is to maintain all the amenities. I like to think of the association as a family and the amenities as the children. We love them all the same and want them all to grow and prosper. While we don't treat each one exactly the same, we try to do what is best for each one individually. We give each the support that it needs. I feel this is the holistic approach that the board needs to take in managing our association. While constantly improving our association, we also need to be constantly vigilant of our bottom line. All costs and expenditures need to be looked at and better ways to do business always on our mind. The proposed budget for 2015 continues to reduce the support for the golf course and food and beverage. The board also plans to review the reserve study and the capital improvement fund and clarify how they work together. It is possible to live a good life and still live within our means. Knowing that there are many homeowners like me whose budgets are very sensitive to any assessment increases, my goal is to keep all increases at or below the cost of living. I feel the board has been open to members' comments and suggestions and has weighed them all carefully. They have moved prudently in moving the Hartman project forward, and the parameters of the project have changed based on member input, and I imagine they'll continue to change as the project continues. The board has also continued to support all the amenities, proposing for 2015, among other things, improvements at the Marina, Little Beach, and the Staples. They are also moving forward on plans to remodel the community center and fund the first year of the lake sediment removal plan. All these improvements are being done for under just a slight, probably 2.5% increase that is under the estimated cost of living for the year. These are all things that I approve of and want to help support. So to wrap up, there are lots of things to love about Hidden Valley Lake and lots of things to want to preserve. Please join me in keeping Hidden Valley Lake our favorite place to live. Thank you, and we're done.
The end. Again, thank you, candidates, for all your hard work and for everyone that did come out today. And I missed all the beautiful weather or hot weather, so maybe you're in the best place. Just another reminder that you should be receiving your ballots this week. If you have any questions about the ballots or the election process, Kathy and I will be available to answer your questions. And a final thank you to SSS Multimedia and again Jackie for our timer, Jordan, who I think escaped, and Ben, our go-to person back there. Thank you all for attending.